I am talking to you. And the reason I'm talking to you is people are always trying to find out, when did this whole thing start? We can go back millennia, but I'm going to start at World War II. World War II was pivotal. A lot of decisions were made. They were really, on the face of it, ridiculous. Think about what kind of psychological viewpoint did Hitler have to have in order to go into the Soviet Union? That had never worked. It's cold there. There's a lot of people, and they're willing to fight to the death. And everyone knows that. All his generals said, "What? What do you want to do?" But they weren't strong enough to say no. And we also looked at so many people thinking Roosevelt was looking for the future, and he was. He made certain deals with the Soviet Union for peace after. But he was sick. He was dying. And his party knew that. And they didn't want his vice president, Wallace, to get in. So they set it up so that he was not going to be put on the ticket. Who did they put on the ticket instead? Truman, who could easily be manipulated because he was a guy who had all sorts of psychological difficulties. They have some very nice biographies of him saying, oh, the buck stopped with him, and such like that. But he was terrified. He didn't want the power. He didn't expect the power. How he did not figure that out, that Roosevelt was dying, I just can't figure that one out. But anyways, so he had his bomb. It was his once he became president. So we knew, leadership of America knew that the Soviet Union had won the war. All they wanted in return was Poland, and that we were going to give them aid to rebuild their cities, just like we were saying that we would do with Germany and Japan. Well, who also was in the war? The British Empire. Now, the British are always saying, oh, we won the war, we filled up with the Blitz and this and that. It was a terrible situation, absolutely. And they had an island. But what Churchill always wanted was to keep the empire. It was about keeping the Suez Canal open for the British good. Just like in Adam Smith, they said, we have to get lots and lots of goods from lots of areas around the world. We have to take the resources, bring it back to England, and then we'll be the masters of the world. And they were for a very long time. They had great trade routes. Well, after the Second World War, they were really done after the First World War, but after the Second World War, they were absolutely done. But Churchill still wanted to keep power for the empire. He wasn't going to give India independence, even though they wanted independence and they had leaders that said, what you have done here is not right. But what Churchill, basically sold to the West was this idea that the Soviet Union was to be feared because he wanted to hold on to Iran. It was very important so they could keep the canal and to keep all the oil fields, who at that time were run by British interests, not Americans. So, why does America come into this? Well, Japan was really stupid, and they did exactly the same thing Hitler did with Russia. Japan said, oh, we can do a surprise attack and get rid of their fleet. Well, they did get rid of some of it. But America armed. And we had lots of resources, and we turned it all to the military, and we said, we're going to win. And America got behind it, and we won at a great cost. Not as great. It was minuscule compared to the USSR. But when I was growing up, I was told America won the war. Just like the British were told that they won the war. I'm not sure if the French were ever told that they won the war. But at least they gave up and said, hey, listen, we want to have Paris. We like our buildings. We want our art. Come on, we'll have some wine. You'll enjoy yourself, you know. Just don't hurt anything. So what you have to realize is we're in a post-war era that has continued to go on. But that post-war era could have been different. We could have gone and looked at what Roosevelt said, the four freedoms. And I'll put a document link underneath so you can actually hear what he had to say. And this is at his deathbed. And sometimes people get very clear. They have clarity when they're ending their life. So, Churchill said to the American people, well, we got to keep our empire. We got to, keep. And then he did a great speech. That was Churchill's art. He was a fantastic orator. I mean, if you've ever listened to the speeches that he made on a regular basis, you would just be blown away. Much better than Roosevelt, much better than Kennedy. He had the American public mesmerized by a speech that he made about the Iron Curtain. He was the one that started it. Okay? The USSR had so many problems after the war. Their people were starving. Everything had been blasted apart. They could barely hold on. They really were not interested in doing anything. But they were asked to come in at the end of the war. And Truman knew that. And he didn't want a second front set up. He said to the American people, we had to bomb because we were going to lose so many people in hand-to-hand fighting in Japan. He let it go simply because the Soviet Union had come in and started a front like they said they would in August. And they killed massive amounts of people. And Japan was horrified. They knew that the Soviet Union would just throw millions of people at them. They didn't want that. And they didn't want to lose their northern islands that they had fought for in, the beginning of the 20th century. Not too many people remember that war. Yeah, Japan and Russia had a war. Okay, so this is always a question. Where do you go back to? Because all these things are continuous. And one decision, bad decision, leads to many other bad decisions. And then you have to cover up those bad decisions. And, well, when the Japanese realized that the Soviet Union was going to fight to the death, they didn't want to lose their land, and they much rather, even though we were very savage in America, napalming and everything like that, terrible losses in all the islands, at least they thought we could negotiate with us. They didn't think they could negotiate with the Soviet Union. So, what happened is Truman said, they capitulated because of the bomb. They didn't capitulate because of the bomb, because all the cities had been bombed out anyways. In fact, it was really hard for them to figure out, Nagasaki especially, because the cities were gone. So, instead of saying, thank you, Soviet Union, for coming in and helping us, we turned a blind eye. We said, no, we won the war. They came to our battleship, right? They came and said they lost. What's fascinating about all the personalities involved, we said we wanted to create democracy, but we left the emperor, a god figure, because, we didn't want to have a civil war in Japan. But we supposedly pick and choose who we want other leaders to be. And we thought we could work with him in the shadows better than we could work with some kind of democracy in Japan. And that had profound effects. What's fascinating about any of these decisions, again, they lead to something else. So we had the rhetoric that we want to spread the American dream, that we wanted everyone to be a democracy. We didn't want anyone to be a democracy. We wanted to take over the empire that obviously could not be run by the British anymore. So we became the policemen of the world. Now, I don't think anyone actually signed up to be the policemen of the world. We were basically isolationists, and we always have been. But there we are. We got the bomb. We now have the NSA, that we can now make sure that we have national security at all times. The FBI, well, do I even need to bring them up? I mean, they went in every single liberal organization, every trade union, and they planted people. And all the information is very plain about everything that happened from that. Basically, what was really well known is what happened with McCarthy. This had had happening for a very long time. And it continued long after McCarthy. The FBI was run by someone who was not mentally stable. Not any more stable than we can say Mao or Stalin or Hitler or all various other people. Individuals make a difference. Absolutely, what is fascinating about the McCarthy era is that trade unions never came back after that. They came up in American history to basically counterbalance what was going on with the personal corporations. Yes, corporations are persons. You know that, I'm sure. And the corporations in America now said, we run the world. So guess what? All the British companies stand aside.